Hey there. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sandy's Insight. So I'm going to bring to you a lot of information that I have gathered over the last few years. And it actually is true and factual, whether you believe it or not. We do have a different understanding as averse people in the world, as well as different perceptions. So here we go. Hope you expand your horizon and expand your mind and be open. Okay? So I understand now, and I want you to understand. So I'm going to start with the year 2020. The year 2020, it was the year of the rat. The Chinese zodiac sign. So we all know that the year of the rats that have, what do they do with rats? They experiment on rats. Experimenting for depopulation purposes, so look at it that way as far as COVID, because COVID came with a lot of different opinions and truths and falsations. Okay, so as COVID came and shut down the whole world, people were distracted because people are always distracted. COVID-19, it was released at the end of 2019, actually officially. So what tends to happen if you keep the people divided? What does division equal? It equals divide to conquer and separate the people. That's how it's always been done, and that's how it'll always be done as far as, through centuries, divide and conquer the people, whether it was kings, government, presidents, whoever, okay? So I'm going to give you a scripture here. It's called Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, okay? So where there is no prophet vision, people cast off restraint, but the blessed is he who keeps the law. So keep in mind, remember, sheep's in wolf clothing. There's many Decepticons among us, okay? You guys all know that story about Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood, it was a wolf that was trying to lead Little Red Riding Hood astray until she caught on. So again, I'm going to repeat myself. There are many Decepticons among us. So a scientific book in 1981, Dean Koontz, it was called The Eyes of Darkness. It's very interesting because it's similar to what happened with the COVID situation, as well as Sylvia. She was psychic Sylvia Brown. She had a book called The End of Days. And then you have predictions and prophecies, as well as other publications and prophecies. You had a prophet. She was well known. Her name was Babaganga, Babvanga. And then you have Nicholas Tesla. You have Nostradamus, which I personally don't think Nostradamus is real. He seems more made up because the stuff is a little different. But again, keep that in mind. There are true prophets, and then there's a lot of false ones. And then you have to make the connection with certain things, especially in pertaining to your life. So now I'm going to give you interesting information that's true and accurate. IBM was connected to Thomas Watts, who was connected to Bill Gates, which was connected to the CDC. The CDC is connected to the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization is connected to the United Nations. The United Nations is connected to the National Legislation of Health, which is also connected to the Global Fund, which was connected to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which they're separated now. They're divorced, but again, which it's all connected, if you get my drift. So, are you aware Dr. Anthony Fauci in 2017, in January, at a college speech and lecture, he stated there will be a pandemic in Donald Trump's term at some point. Now, this is the first term that Donald Trump had before Joe Biden took over. So what I call this is called a pre-planned agenda, okay? So it was pre-planned. It just didn't pop up out of thin air like you're told to believe. So the CDC actually popped up giving guidelines to the whole world in regards to control, but we'll get into that. So there was also a video on Forbes breaking news video. Her name was Cassie Grill. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, so forgive me. It's Cassidy Grills. It's WALEN Sky. She was at a Senate hearing, and like I said, they were basically, what was going on, it was board members were misusing funds. The scarf lady, her name was Deborah LBIRX. Okay, she was misusing funds as well. So again, there was some hearings that were held over the last couple years in secret, and they weren't publicized, versus some here in the United States and other countries. They were publicized. So there was a lot of information that you didn't see firsthand. So don't question what you don't know, because you can't see everything. So, okay, and then you have Bill Gates, which is interesting because there's an actual, the Gates Foundation. There's a lab in New York State, which you have, the address is going to be 1 Cold Harbor Laboratory in Laurel Hollow, New York, okay? So you have to keep in mind that a lot of people, there's different labs across the world, and people do experiment on things, and sometimes they mess up, and it doesn't get out to the public. It's just, how do we handle this situation? So you had also Bill Gates, he was experimenting in the AIDS pandemic on people in impoverished countries during the AIDS pandemic. So a lot of the African countries, they were pretty much, people were lab rats. So, and then now it's available and out there because we have the World Wide Web, and you can have access to it, versus back then you didn't have access to it. You also had an event in January of 2020, which I find interesting. It was called the 201 event. It was an experiment or an exercise to see how many people would die from the virus. Yes, this actually happened. So then, now the COVID virus. Let's vindicate the bats and stop buying what they are stop buying what they're selling us on TV, television, music. It's telling your vision. It's programming your vision, basically. Whatever you listen to. So keep that in mind. You have to discern for yourself the information that you get, and you can actually do your own research. So let me explain how COVID first spread, okay? It spread, in my opinion, and I believe this to be true and factual, through cloud seeding. So cloud seeding is a process used in weather modification. Okay, it was pyrotechnic flares, or otherwise known as silver iodine flares. Silver iodine flares are the most common type of flares used in cloud seeding. These flares are ignited and released into the clouds from aircrafts or ground-based generators. The most common chemical used for cloud seeding includes silver iodine, potassium iodine, and dry ice, which is solid. It's actually solid carbon dioxide, okay? So it's called seeding the atmosphere with aluminum dioxide, and using sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide combined with H2O and air forms sulfuric acid, which is acid rain. So if you put it in the stratosphere with cloud seeding, what happens then? Boom! It's worldwide. So there you go. So my example to you that I'm going to use. Think of when you sprinkle your table salt on a plate of food. It's the same concept. You don't do that from low down, you do it from up high to get your salt evenly placed on your food. Okay, so acid rain and cloud seeding and how they do it, it's the same concept. So acid rain can acidify. It causes deforestation. In waterways, it causes damage of aquatic life. It can also corrode building materials and paint. Sulfur dioxide affects the respiratory system. Okay, folks, did you hear me? Sulfur dioxide affects the respiratory system, particularly the lung function, and it can irritate the eyes. Sulfur dioxide, it irritates the respiratory tract and your eyes, okay? it causes coughing and mucus secretion as well. And some people, per their conditions, have way more mucus than others from whatever elements they have or how their lifestyle is pertaining to. So it aggravates conditions such as asthma, chronic bronchitis, which makes it worse. People with the pre-existing conditions are going to have more problems. The people without pre-existing conditions, they're going to have less problems. So basically, then I'm going to end up explaining the atmosphere's layers to you. So Earth's atmospheres is made up of 5 major layers. There's 7 layers, but technically we use 5. And several secondary layers from lowest to highest. You have the stratosphere, the stratosphere, the mesosphere, the thermosphere, and the exosphere. You have the pauses in between, so it's the stratopause, the stratopause, the mesopause, thermopause, and the exobase. So that layer is between, they're layers between the spheres. So we have balloons and planes in the troposphere, okay? Our ozone layer and like the radiosondes, are in the stratosphere. Your meteors and your meteorologic rockets are in the mesosphere. Your satellites and spaceships and space stations, they're actually in the exosphere. The aurora lights, they're going to be in the thermosphere. So that explains, I want you to understand that as far as the different spheres and what can be placed per. That way you can understand the whole concept of how, like I said, so when you put the plane in the atmosphere, it goes into the stratosphere, and then it releases in the clouds. And you have, like I said, the wind carries it, the weather carries it. Again, it spreads as far as weather modification is a real thing. Okay? So then I'm going to go into volcanoes, which volcanoes are key as well. Volcanoes are key when it comes to eruptions occurring. They produce sulfur dioxide gas when they erupt. There were 74 confirmed eruptions during 2020 from 69 volcanoes. 28 of these were new eruptions. In 2021, you had 83 confirmed eruptions from 77 different volcanoes. 34 of them were new eruptions. In 2022, you had 85 confirmed eruptions from 80 different volcanoes, and 33 of those were new eruptions. In 2023, you had it was 60 to 64 confirmed eruptions from 65 volcanoes. So 16 to 19 of them were new eruptions. In 2024, we had 72 confirmed eruptions from 64 volcanoes, and 30 of those were new eruptions, okay? So now, imagine how sulfur dioxide that's been released, and now it's weaponized. So basically, that's what COVID was. It was weaponized, It's a different type of experiment to see what happens. And you mix it in a lab, and it's airborne across the globe, Earth. So back in 2020, going back to 2020, the year of the rat, we were all lab rats. And even some eruptions, to give you a fun fact, they affect air traffic control as far as planes concerned. If it's a major eruption, planes have to be diverted because of the ash clouds and so forth in the patterns that they actually go naturally. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up. Stay tuned for the next segment of Sandy's Insight. I appreciate you all. I'm here to share the love, and all right, take care. Peace out.